It's a bright Pennsylvania morning. Two American gentlemen stand 10 yards apart, their hands trembling, perhaps from adrenaline or fear, but more than likely a combination of both. An insult was uttered the day prior, which, for the time, was a direct invitation to an officiated death match. One of the men is likely to die from this encounter, if not from a fatal wound, then likely from bleeding out or later infection. The duel, a bizarre juxtaposition of gentlemanly honor and ugly barbarism. But why guns and swords? Why not just fist fight? What were the rules for all of this? Why did Burr kill Hamilton in a duel? Were American politics just violent back then? Be sure to let me know in the comments what it would take for you to duel somebody. To understand dueling, you have to understand the bygone era of honor. In times past, like the 17th or 18th century, if you were a gentleman presumed to be chivalrous and honorable, your honor was all you had. It meant you were trustworthy, capable, and respectable. Lose it, and your career, social standing, and even family reputation could collapse. In the midst of a legal dispute, a man could surely win the case, but no court could restore his good name. The court of public opinion decided whether he was brave or moral. So when someone questioned your character back then, the only proper response was to challenge them to a duel. And you weren't really just fighting your opponent, you were fighting public perception. Showing up on the field meant that you valued your honor more than your life. And in an honor culture, that's what made you a real man. Though dueling wasn't just spontaneous violence, it was ritualized, standardized violence. So standardized in fact, that there were rather popular rule books for the practice, although some unwritten rules also existed. The Irish Code Duello of 1777 laid out strict rules for gentlemen's duels. Firstly, insults, acts of humiliation, or otherwise perceived dishonor must be serious, and the order and degree of the offensive act mattered. The rulebook states that if man A calls man B an offensive name, man A is expected to apologize first, even if whatever man B says in retaliation is significantly worse. Here's a quick top 5 to give some context. At number 5 was general disagreements or heated language, followed by indirect insults or gossip, such as insulting a wife or a daughter. At number 3 was direct verbal insults, such as fool or idiot. Coming in at number 2 was direct questioning or insulting another man's honor, like accusing the victim of cheating, cowardice, or lying. Now, we should note that calling someone a liar was a serious issue. Serious enough that Code Duello mentions it several times. If the first insult given is an accusation of lying, then the aggressor is required by rule to either apologize immediately, duel for 2 shots before apologizing, or duel for 3 shots, then explain himself, or continue dueling until someone is gravely injured or dead. Ranking number 1, as you may expect, was physically striking someone, which had its own little flowchart. Most interesting in this interaction, though, was the opportunity for the offender to offer the victim his cane to strike the wrongdoer back with, while simultaneously apologizing, presumably profusely. Seconds, trusted friends or associates, were common in dueling cultures and were there to arrange everything and, before it came to violence, ideally tried to negotiate peace and played a very important role not often depicted in popular media. It was the seconds that decided on and evaluated weapons, agreed on the time and place, and set the rules. I should point out here that if the seconds disagreed at some point to the point of wanting to duel each other, which did happen, the Code Duello states that it must be done beside their homies, with some specific rules for this circumstance as well. The whole point of the duel wasn't necessarily to kill, but to achieve satisfaction. By risking death, you proved your honor. This is why many duels ended with both men alive, and many men simply showing up, firing a shot in the air, and leaving. There have been many famous duels throughout history, with the most popular probably being the Aaron Burr-Alexander Hamilton feud. Long story short, both men were fierce political rivals, with Hamilton helping Thomas Jefferson win the 1800 election and later publicly calling Burr, quote, dangerous and unprincipled. Remember, this is an honor insult. After this, during the 1804 run for the New York governor role, with Hamilton campaigning against Burr, Hamilton again publicly trash-talked his foe, prompting Burr to demand an apology. But Hamilton refused, believing that everything he had said about Burr was true. Once Burr challenged Hamilton, this put the latter in a sticky situation. On one hand, even though dueling violated his own personal moral and religious beliefs, refusing to duel after running his mouth so much would be political suicide, as it showed fear and dishonor. While on the other hand, dueling carried the serious likelihood of death, a fate his own son Philip Hamilton met just 3 years prior, defending his father's honor. So in 1804, Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr met on a dueling ground in Weehawken, New Jersey. Hamilton allegedly fired into the air, sufficient to show honor, but Burr's bullet struck Hamilton, killing him. Burr became a political outcast for this, showing how duels could destroy reputations just as much as they could defend them. Dueling encounters between American politicians were not exactly uncommon, with some famous names like Andrew Jackson getting into many duels, even killing a man and probably many others if you know about him. Cassius Marcellus Clay, the notoriously violent abolitionist who I made a stellar video on that you should probably definitely go watch, participating in more than he could remember. Even Abraham Lincoln nearly dueled Senator James Shields after Lincoln made fun of him. The story goes that Lincoln chose for them to duel with swords because of his huge reach advantage, and even sliced a tree branch above his opponent's head to demonstrate this, but seconds diffused the situation right before they fought. I could make a whole video about these almost duels. Let me know in the comments if they interest you. Like when just before the US invaded Iraq, Iraqi Vice President Ramadan suggested that George Bush and Saddam Hussein just duel each other as opposed to going to war, though Bush chickened out of this. Yeah, but what about this? Yeah, so this 10 paces turn around and fire Wild West duel was almost unheard of, and much like most of what you'll see in Western films, was mostly Hollywood romanticizing the reality of cowboys. Now there were impulsive shootouts, although these were mostly spur of the moment events over gambling, drinking, and women. Obvious burning question. Why didn't people just sue or call the cops? Well, because in the honor culture, legal punishment, as said before, meant nothing. I should also mention here that dueling was very illegal. But I mean, put yourself in their shoes. In modern times, if a guy at the bar suggests that your woman is a lady of the night or something, calling the cops on him is lame, and you'll be called names for that, while fighting him is the perceived route of honor. Likewise, in modern times, your reputation surely matters, but most things can be ignored or shrugged off. However, there was an extended period of time in our history where honor was an indescribably valuable social currency. The law could fine your opponent or jail them, but it couldn't restore your reputation. That's no different from today. Dueling became a parallel justice system, an arena for men of status to prove themselves. Accepting a duel acknowledged your opponent's equality, while refusing could mark you as a coward, something Hamilton dealt with personally. The underlying idea was that the law could not always decide who was correct in a dispute, and that God would save the righteous man. By the mid-19th century, dueling started to feel like barbaric acts of antiquity. Modern legal systems grew stronger, cities replaced rural honor societies, and media mocked duelists as staunch conservatives caught in the past. And a new middle-class morality valued restraint over bloodshed. By the late 1800s, pistol dueling was mostly gone. Society decided that reputation wasn't worth killing for anymore, which was probably for the better, but that didn't stop everybody. A relatively recent duel took place. In 1967, this was carried out by politicians. It's surprising, I know. It was this guy, Gaston Deffier, and this guy, René Ripier. The story goes that the men were in a debate in the French National Assembly, where Ripier criticized Deffer's policies. Deffer was not having it, and shouted "Taisez-vous, abruti," which translates to "shut up, idiot." If you've been paying attention, you know that this is dueling language, especially in the highly formal environment of the assembly, a serious personal insult. Ripier then challenged his opponent to a duel to defend his honor, to which Deffer accepted. They met the next day and dueled with swords, one of the few real duels that we have on camera. By the end, Deffer was the winner, with Ripier, the challenger, lightly wounded twice before the referee ended the battle. Regardless of win or loss, honor was satisfied, as is the intent. Pretty neat, right? The duel seems absurd today, but it reminds us of a time where courage, reputation, and social standing meant much more than living to see the next day. Imagine if your entire career and community respect hinged on one morning with a pistol. Let me know in the comments, would you meet your opponent and battle them in a duel, or would you just block them on Instagram? Dueling may be gone, but the human demand for honor never went anywhere. We just found new ways to settle it with lawsuits and internet celebrity boxing matches. I appreciate you watching until the end. That helps my channel more than you will ever know. If you enjoyed the video, which you probably did, you watched until the end, hit the like button, comment down below, tell me something that you found out today or learned, or maybe even have more questions about, and subscribe to the channel. There's more content like this on the way and on your screen right now. I'll see you next time.